And now, all over the world.
1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses with my co-hosts John Sharan and Ardina Seward. How are you guys today?
I am great.
I'm enjoying the warm weather.
Yeah, I'm not having a great day.
Why?
Well, over the weekend was Holocaust Remembrance Day, and it's, it was created by politicians, not by grassroots Jewish organizations, and there's a lot of pontificating that goes on with it, and it's not a grassroots organization, and it just reminds me of everything I hate about my hometown of Portchester, because there was rampant anti-Semitism there, and someone put up this post yesterday about Portchester and about Holocaust Remembrance Day, and these people were pontificating using flowery language when basically the community is at best.
They're posturing and they're not sincere.
Exactly. But now we have to go on with our show. But I just wanted to bring that up because it's bothering me.
It should, that's an important thing, and I think that presenting those views is a good thing to do, because
I was profane on Facebook.
Well, okay, and I'm sure the management at WVOX appreciates you're not being profane on the air.
I'm not repeating anything that.
No, but my point is that
go to my Facebook.
It's a serious matter, and I think that you have every right to be, and when they do something like that, they should be held accountable.
I had a football coach,
and you did a good thing by holding them accountable.
I had a football coach named DeCecco, who ran on the field during a scrimmage against Mount St. Michael and called me a stupid blanking Jew during a scrimmage. That was one of the coaches of the football.
How lovely.
It was a great place to grow up. I used to tell people that my father wanted to pick a community that reminded him of his home country. My father was raised in Nazi Germany, so he picked Portchester. Anyway, we have a guest on today who's on the phone and who's listening to this crap and wondering, what did I get myself into today? The gentleman is named Michael Max Knobbe, and he is the person who runs BronxNet, which is a media company in the Bronx. It's community television, and I'm sure you get wackos like me on your air all the time, Michael Max Knobbe, don't you?
Well, it's about multiple points of view and presenting ideas, and there's like hometown pride, but you got to be aware and have an ear to the ground of what's going on in a hometown and be civically engaged, and that's why we value community radio so much, and that's why we value the local voices on community television on channels like BronxNet so much. And so there's an affinity for what you do at WVOX and what we do at BronxNet, and providing a voice for people who live in the community, and TV studios, and
one of those voices
to learn media and to produce media on local television, connecting the Bronx to Westchester and to the world.
I think one of those voices is also on the phone talking with us. I don't know her last name. Ardina, do you know her last name? Her name is Eileen.
Yes, Eileen is, I believe, with the Bronx Homeless Coalition. Am I right, Max?
No, this is Eileen Torres. Yes. She is one of our partners at BronxNet, but she is the executive director of a great organization in the Bronx called Bronx Works.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I know Bronx Works.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, hi, Eileen. Thanks for coming
to
the show.
You know who writes about Bronx Works a lot on Facebook? And I know Eileen knows it. David Gonzalez.
David Gonzalez. Name's very familiar, but
he's a New York Times. He's a New York Times reporter.
Oh yes,
he's a very talented photographer.
He does the lens column,
Times, and a proud Bronxite.
He's a very proud Bronxite, and he invites me often to some of the art shows off of Bruckner Boulevard in the South Bronx near the Piano Building.
Oh yeah,
Wallworks just had a big opening.
That's it.
And speaking of proud Bronxites, Michael, Max, you're going to jump in the water in a couple of weeks.
Eileen, are you going with him?
Yes. We jump in with him as well.
You're jumping in Orchard. I guess the water isn't as dirty in Orchard Beach as it is other times of year because of the cold water. Things don't leach up to the surface.
Well,
it's quite exquisite. I mean, we are in a borough of parks in the Bronx, and
yes.
Part of Pelham Bay Park is this beautiful beach, Orchard Beach, the French Riviera of the Bronx on the Long Island Sound, and it can be appreciated all seasons, including the winter. But when we go in on February 17th, 2018, that Saturday, February 17th, we're going in for a good cause. We're going in to raise awareness about homelessness and to raise support for the homeless services of Bronx Works.
And we're going to hear more. We're going to hear more about that. We're coming up to a break.
Our long break. So please, guys,
stay with us.
Yes, both of our guests, Eileen and
Michael,
stay with us, and our listeners too. We're going to be back as a Fox News break and a Fox Business break. Business news, and this is WVOX. We are Westchester Eye on the radio. Please stay tuned and don't go anywhere for 7 minutes. Listen to the news, and then you can interact with us. We'll be right back.
WVOX. Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. I'm John Sharan along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and we have two special guests on the line, Eileen Torres, the Executive Director of Bronx Works, and Michael Max Knobbe, the Executive Director of BronxNet, the borough's public access television station and community media center. Michael, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about the history of BronxNet?
Sure. So we are this year celebrating 25 years of public services as a nonprofit, offering media training for students, and we've trained thousands of students. It's middle school students, high school students, and college students from all over that come to our studios on the beautiful campus of Lehman College, as well as at Mercy College in the East Bronx and the Hutch Metro Center to take internships and fellowships, intensive experiential high-impact learning that can lead to careers in communications-related fields, and even at networks on air, like Darlene Rodriguez started at BronxNet. Now she's an anchor at NBC, and then that's when she was hired to do the World Cup and more.
That's when she was Darlene Pomalis.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. You win a T-shirt, BronxNet T-shirt.
And Michael, and Michael, if somebody wants to get involved with BronxNet, how do they do that?
So our website is bronxnet.tv and www.bronxnet.tv, and there you can find all sorts of great information, including where to go in the Bronx, videos about the Bronx, and how to take training classes, whether you live in the Bronx as a member of the public or you're a student. We have training and studios and technologies that you can use, you can leverage to amplify your voice through media. It's quite wonderful to see the positive outcomes, and when the students come back and they're Emmy Award-winning professionals in the field, and they started with us in high school, it does instill pride. And when you also look at the diversity of the channels, reflecting the diversity of the community in the Bronx, one of the most diverse places in the world, you'll see across the channels multilingual programs, and it's everything that we share, including arts and culture, to news and information, to voter literacy. Hey, who are the candidates? Where do they stand on the issues? These are new faces. These are incumbents, and they come into the studios to debate. They do the video voter guide. They do in the district interviews, and it's important. And it's about civic engagement and understanding what are the issues in the community and what we can do together to help.
How long have you been associated with BronxNet?
So I've been executive director for, I guess, close to 15 years now. And
wow, your level of enthusiasm is incredible.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
Eileen,
it.
Eileen, is he like
I live
that?
in the Bronx. I'm born and raised, and it's a part of...
What part of the Bronx? What part of the Bronx?
I grew up in Kingsbridge in the Bronx, around 231st
Really?
Street.
Okay.
Yeah. And I went to PS7 over there. I went to up the hill. Then I went to 141, and then of course Bronx Science. So I would say that I live in between. I live in between where I grew up and where I work now. I live in Van Cortlandt Village, which is a pretty historic area.
Yeah, for people who don't know the Bronx very well, Bronx High School of Science is between two other campuses. It's DeWitt Clinton off of Mosholu, and then the other side is where is Lehman College, which he was just talking about as being one of the homes of BronxNet. That's pretty interesting.
Which brings, since you went to Bronx High School of Science, I want to drag the conversation back to aquatics. Now, there's a lot of science in the water. Aquatics. There's a lot of science in the waters of Orchard Beach. So I'm still trying to figure out why you do this and how you prepare yourself. I mean, you're going from an office suit to presumably a wetsuit, and it's going to be kind of cold out there.
Well, the only people that will have wetsuits are our lifeguards. We do have lifeguards from the Coney Island Polar Bears who joined the Bronx Polar Bears on February 17th. But hey, if you go in and you're wearing a wetsuit, that kind of defeats the purpose, because it's about experiencing the cold water, which some people say is healthful. There's a health benefit from going in the cold water.
I think Ardina meant bathing suit. You didn't mean wetsuit, did you?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm always cold, and when I worked in broadcast, one of my ritual jobs was to go out to Coney Island on January 1st every year and cover the Polar Bear Club, and we'd be standing out there, the press corps in ultra down, and these guys and girls would jump into the water with Speedos and bikinis.
Except Hanshu would not wear a lot of clothes when he was doing that, when he was taking photography.
And there was
he's from the Bronx, too.
He's from the Bronx. It must be a Bronx thing. And there was one guy, I don't know if you remember him, Michael Max, his name was Abraham, who he was in his 70s. He would jump into the water, and he would do all these calisthenics.
He was crazy,
I said he was crazy.
Completely crazy.
But I asked him once, I said, how do you do it? And he looked at me very, very...
very
philosophically, and he said, "Goat's milk. I drink goat's milk all the time." And I thought, dude, you out of your mind. But so do you have a formula?
Hey, you're from Amerenik. You don't get to say dude like that.
I do. Well, believe it or not, the little poverty pocket that I came from, we did happen to reference dude.
Oh, please.
And we did.
Please. Eileen, are you buying her dude comment?
We did speak in Ebonics.
Eileen, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Are you buying her? Are you buying her dude comment?
You're getting so far off the mark, Moses. We are talking about polar bears. Polar bears. Don't worry about my Ebonics or
next. You're going to try to cultivate your Jewish part and call these people who are going in the water in freezing temperatures Meshugana? I mean, where are you going next with this?
I don't. Who knows?
Or are you going to try to sound British and say it's balmy?
No. It's all language has its roots. All language has its roots. Oh my
goodness!
It does.
We're going to be going to break in a short little while. When we come back, I'd like to hear from Eileen a little bit more about what kinds of things you discuss on BronxNet, the kind of demographic you're reaching. I don't know if they're the exact demographic you're looking for, and also
happy to do so.
Yeah, and from Michael, we'd like to hear more about how BronxNet gets funded, the width and breadth of the kinds of shows that you have on, and some of the alumni that have come through your doors, because you said you've had a multiple award-winning news people come out of there, and I think people would like to know who those people might be, because I mean, Ardina and I both know and love Darlene from the time she was at News Radio 88 right up to the present. This is Westchester Eye on the radio on WVOX and WVOX.com. I'm going to do less talking in the next half hour and more listening, and I'm sure you, the listeners, will be very, very pleased about that. We'll be right back after these commercial words.
WVOX. Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
We are back live. This is Westchester Eye on the Radio. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guests today are Michael Max Knobbe. I love his name. I want to call him Max Knob. and Eileen, and they are both from BronxNet, and they are both involved with the Bronx Polar Bear Club. Now, before Peter hijacked the subject, we want to talk more about the Bronx, about getting in the water, and we were talking.
Wait, weren't we going to have Eileen talk about her association with BronxNet? Can't we get? We should end the show with the polar bears, because that's what the event. That Peter, is coming into flack.
Peter, you said you were going to speak less in this segment, so I think that Ardina really should be running this segment.
Okay, so it's going to be.
I'm sorry, I'm shutting up.
It's going to be Peter is on a roll today. We need to get Peter in the water. I think that would kind of change. That would give him a sense of
blubber.
Can I just clarify for a second?
Yes.
I'm Eileen Torres. I'm the executive director of Bronx Works.
Bronx Works,
which is
sorry.
We work closely with BronxNet, but it's not the same organization.
Okay.
No,
gotcha.
We realize that.
Okay, gotcha. Now, so to the both of you, it's a two-part question. Max, how do you prepare yourself to get into the water? And Eileen, how does that benefit? How does this event benefit your organization? So we'll start with Max first.
So it's been, long held that there is a health benefit to going in the cold water. And, I relax before I go in. I stay loose. Some people, if it's your first time going in the cold water, it's recommended that you wear those little aqua booties and aqua gloves, because your fingers and your toes are the first to get really cold. So that's something that you get at your local diving shop or the sports shop. And the other thing is, it's good to know that Havana Cafe on East Tremont in the Bronx, they are going to be providing hot soup and hot cocoa, as they do each year, for the Bronx Polar Bear Winter Swim Against Homelessness. So it's good to have some warm liquid ready, soup, hot cocoa, hot tea, and we do, and we will. And the way I got into this was basically I was training for a triathlon. I said, let me try swimming in open water, and it was early March instead of training in the pool. And I realized there was something I enjoyed about that, and I decided to participate in cold water swimming, and I met people through that. And, in addition to that thrill that you feel, there is something by going in the cold water, there is something else that happens. I mean, you kind of become sympathetic and empathetic with people who are out in conditions not by choice for prolonged periods of time, because you know what? Prolonged exposure to the cold like this is not a good idea. You go in for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer at most, but not much. Some people just go in for a couple of minutes and come right out. But there are people, and it's not their choice, that are exposed to these elements for longer periods of time. And Bronx Works is a great organization that has been helping all sorts of folks across this great borough for many years.
And okay, Eileen, can you give us an idea of what the size of the homeless population is in the Bronx?
So for the Bronx itself, we just finished the Hope Count, so I don't have the official numbers yet. The Hope Count's when we go out, is a coordinated effort between the city and some of the providers and volunteers to count the number of people who are out in the street, and it takes place usually, in January when they pick one of the coldest nights of the year, and they try to figure out and get an estimate of the number of homeless. So for us, it's a little bit more than 200. But overall, long term, for the number of years that we've been doing the Hope Count, we've actually seen a drop in numbers. Most recently, though, the last couple of years, we have seen an increase.
But out of that, I mean, I know that you're not a statistician, but out of that general population, what percentage of those people are homeless based on based on being priced out of apartments and those who have mental health issues?
It's a combination of factors, and it's a challenging population. What you will have, it's usually chronically homeless individuals. You'll have sort of some mental health challenges. There can be some substance abuse, and all of those, of course, if untreated, if they're living somewhere, they'll end up out in the street. Eventually, spending sort of their resources on other things, or not having a mental illness that goes untreated for a prolonged period of time, and they end up with family members who are sort of tired of having them in the house, or they're considered disruptive, and so they're pushed out of where they're living.
Then is it fair to say that there is a permanent homeless population, because there are people who just don't want to go to shelters and people who prefer to live in the street?
I don't think anyone prefers to live out in the street. So, people live out in the street because they feel there isn't an alternative for them. So there are certainly individuals that we see that are resistant to being in a shelter. And it could be for a variety of reasons. Either, there are a lot of rules that you have to comply with if you want to be in a shelter, or they're afraid of being in a shelter. But I don't think, anyone sets out the thought of sort of living out in the street. So we do follow a model, which is followed now across the country, where, the idea is you house the person first. So you take care of the homeless issue by housing them, and anything that happened that caused them to become homeless, you try to figure out and assist once they're placed somewhere. And as I'm sure you know, the housing stock is difficult to find right now. So it's a challenge to place people. The numbers that we work with are people who may have been living on the street for at least 9 months or longer. Sure, someone could get kicked out of the apartment, a living arrangement, on a temporary basis, but then usually they're back, they patch things up with their family members and they're back in if it's not something that's a serious nature. But the folks that we see are people who have been out in the street for a very long time.
Eileen, how does Bronx Works work with Bronx Net to help the homeless?
So we do, besides this one particular event that's coming up on February 17th, is a coordinated effort between Bronx Works and Bronx Net. And Michael Max actually had been doing this for at least a year before we partnered together. So, he was braving the cold water before we came up with the idea of having this polar bear dip tied to the Bronx Works and our homeless population, to really raise awareness of the fact that there are so many street homeless individuals, and that if you ask someone out in the street what they need most of the time, besides saying somewhere to live, it's they'd like some cold weather gear, socks, underwear, gloves, hats, coats.
Now, Michael, has Orchard Beach Bay ever iced over?
So for the first time a couple of years ago, it's salt water, right? It's Long Island Sound. There's a little bit of salt in there. It's very hard for that to happen. The Coney Island polar bears traditionally swim in the ocean there, and that does get cold. But they said they do this with us as well. They go together with us in the Bronx at Orchard Beach, and they said that the coldest water they've ever been in, the president of the club in particular said this, was in the Bronx with us at Orchard Beach that 1 year. It was definitely iced over a bit. It's rare that happens, but it did happen, and we enjoy it. We proceed. We go forward, and
Go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Eileen.
How old is the oldest person in that group? I mean, is this a sport for the young, or can you get some frisky seniors in there who have the guts to jump in?
Absolutely. So, I mean, the Coney Island Polar Bears are over 100 years. That organization, our organization, is about coming on 8 years, right? And one of our co-founders is part of the Dagnes Vanagi House in the Bronx, which is a Baltic cultural society. There are Latvians living in the Bronx, and they are the folks that I went into the World Winter Swimming Championships in the Baltic Sea, and we're the only UST team competing, and one of the guys, he looks like, and he's maybe in his 30s or 40s, but he's definitely way up in the 70s, and his name is Valdez Freemanis. He'll be out there with us, as well as the other folks from the Dagnes Vonnegut team, Liga, and Valdez Jr. There'll be some real heroes that are out there of all generations, you can ask them questions. They have expert advice on this. If you want to just come and check it out, have some hot soup in your coat this year, and then join us in the swimsuit next year, you can do that too.
Do you guys have an EMS van standing by just in case somebody gets a little overshocked when they get in that water?
The FDNY does send a team, which we always appreciate. We thank the Parks Department. We thank the FDNY EMS, and all that to make this possible. And and I would say also that
we're going to have to. I have to interrupt you because we're going to have to continue this on the other side of the break, a short one, in our final quarter hour. So stay with us, folks. You can call in at 914-636-0110. We are here for you. Stay with us. We will be back.
WVOX. Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to Westchester Eye on the Radio for our final quarter hour. I'm John Sharan, along with Peter Moses and Ardina Seward, and our special phone-in guests today, Michael Max Knobbe, the Executive Director of BronxNet, the borough's public access television station and community media center, and Eileen Torres, the Executive Director of Bronx Works. And Eileen, you were telling us a little bit beforehand about the work with the homeless in the Bronx. And you also mentioned the situation involving an event with BronxNet, where Bronx Works and BronxNet will work together in February. Could you tell us a little bit about, in detail, what that is and how long that relationship's been going on?
Sure. So the relationship with BronxNet and Bronx Works has been, we've sort of worked together for years with a number of our staff appearing at BronxNet. But to sort of talk about the general work that Bronx Works does. And so we've been around since 1972. And we're a fairly large organization serving primarily the southern part of the Bronx, but with borough-wide programs. And
what's this event?
We're talking now about the homeless, but we do more than the homeless as well,
And what's this event in February that the two of you are going to work awn
So this is the Bronx Polar Bear Dip, and it's,
I'm sorry, I
we call it
misinterpreted
the dip to raise awareness for homelessness.
I apologize. I thought that this was a separate deal. I didn't realize that it was the Polar Bear Dip, and that we had been discussing the entire program. And the date for that's going to be?
February 17th at Orchard Beach.
Mm-hmm.
And so the event itself, if you look, there's a number of polar bear dips that happen sort of, in different locations, and they're usually tied to some sort of charity. And so the one here in the Bronx is I think appropriately so tied to Bronx Works. And it's really to raise awareness about homelessness, and it's really, a few minutes or even a few seconds in the cold water really pales in comparison to what a street homeless person has to endure throughout the winter months. We had that freezing temperature, very recently, and, everyone's sort of rushing to get indoors. For many of these people, they don't have the option of running indoors. They're out there sort of day in and day out. So
if our listeners,
really to raise awareness and try to have people donate new cold weather gear so that we can give those out to the street homeless population.
And if our listeners want to participate, is there a website where they can contact you?
So there is a website. So it's www.bronxworks.org. And on our first page, our homepage, there's a link that leads you to the Polar Bear Dip.
Now, Michael, for people who are interested in taking the plunge, What advice would you tell? What advice would you give as far as preparation? I mean, is this something that they have to start eating now? I mean, do you start loading up on carbs 2 weeks beforehand, or what do you do?
I would say that just a good regimen of your usual winter diet with soup and hot tea, and that's all good. I love ginger, fresh ginger. I love hot peppers. I'll do a little hot pepper. If you're not used to hot peppers, don't bother with that. But fresh ginger, there's nothing wrong with that. Having that in your back pocket at the Winter Swim Against Homelessness, and like I said, there will be hot soup there. But I think the big thing is, come and go in the water on that day if you feel like you're ready. Always check with your doctor before trying any new physical activity for sure. If you feel like, hey, maybe I'm not sure, just come on out with your coat and ask questions while you're there. And those of you who are first-timers, the aqua socks, the aqua gloves are always good to have. And we are collecting on-site new gloves, new socks, new hats, new scarves at Orchard Beach and also at Bronx Works locations. We are collecting these items for the homeless, and you can support the homeless services of Bronx Works while engaging with the community, enjoying some hot soup together, listening to music, and going into the beautiful waters off of Orchard Beach in the Bronx.
Do you find that since you have been doing this, getting in the water when it's cold like that you've become less sensitive to the cold, or is that just my over-interpreting?
I think, yeah. I mean, once you do it, you kind of get like an excitement. You look forward to it, really, And there were people that went in during the year that there was a little thin sheet of ice on the water, and that was a pretty fearsome year, and they've returned. They were first timers, and they have returned. So the water can be freezing. Yeah.
And how many people in your group are from the Baltic states and from basically come from cold climates where they've been acclimated to this since they were kids?
We have members that are from Africa originally. We have members that are Latino folk from the Bronx. We've got our own staffs, our own team that want to go in. I mean, the Bronx Works team is amazing, and they love it, and they go in, and same thing with the Bronx Net team.
We're a pretty diversified group.
Yeah, there's someone calling in who's actually from City Island, which Orchard Beach is next to, sort of.
We have
right around the corner.
Named Dan.
Dan? Well, Dan, you're there on the
line?
line?
Are you there, Dan?
Yes, I'm here on the line. I was driving home listening to the radio. I love WVOX. And you were talking about BronxNet, and I thought maybe you should know that Dennis Nardone and has a show that he's going to be doing on BronxNet. And then, is Eileen still there?
Yes, she is there.
Because
yes,
when Eileen said, no, I'm not Eileen from BronxNet, I'm Eileen from Bronx Work, I was wondering if that was Manny DeValle's cousin, Eileen Torres.
Yes.
Yeah, Eileen, I took you and your sister Marisol out for lunch. I'm also a 9/11 family member, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to say hello to you. And you're talking about Orchard Beach, my favorite place over here. And WVOX is such a great station. Eileen does a lot of wonderful work in the Bronx, and it's nice to speak with her.
I think he's a plant.
Thank you.
Is he a plant, Eileen? Is he a plant?
No, I'm not a plant. I don't want to take up any
I haven't talked to him in quite a few
Thanks
years.
for calling in, Dan.
I'm sure, Eileen, I'll see you again. You're devoted to your cousin's memory, and I really I admire that. I think you know that. And
thank you.
WVOX is such a great radio station. I had to call in and say that Dennis and the Mixed Nut Band is going to have a show on BronxNet that I'm looking forward to.
Well, thanks, Dan. Why don't you join the Polar Bear Club?
Yes,
Why don't
you should come out and join us.
Yeah, I could do that right now at the end of the block here. Orchard Beach is a great place. My neighbor here has a bird society, City Island Birds, if you Google it, and they're there looking for owls all the time. And I'm not going in the water only in the summertime. I'm sorry, I can't do that.
It's okay. We give you permission for that.
It's okay.
Listen, you guys have a great day. Eileen, great hearing your voice, and I'm sure I'll see you in the journey.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
nice
care.
hearing
Bye-bye.
from you, too.
Sure, bye-bye.
Now, how many
Dennis
people...
and Vic Saab are doing a show about rock and roll and doo-wop in the Bronx on BronxNet from our East Bronx studios at the Hutch Metro Center at Mercy College. We're excited for that, to premiere that.
And when will that be?
I believe they're working on their pilot right now. So,
is there a way for people to reach you? Both of you and your different organizations. Can you give us either both an email and a website that people can log into to learn more and to correspond?
Absolutely. So for
let Eileen go first. Let Eileen go first. Come on.
Okay, Eileen, ladies first.
Hi. Sure. So my email address is eTorres, ETORRES @BronxWorks.org, and Bronx Works is all one word, no spaces.
Okay.
And now
is there a website?
There is a website, so it's www.bronxworks.org.
Okay. And we don't want to shortchange you.
Max, how can people get in contact with you?
Max@BronxNet.org is my email, max@BronxNet.org. Our Instagram is @BronxNetTV. That's our Twitter as well, @BronxNetTV. And our website is www.bronxnet.tv, and we are a nonprofit. And finally, our organization, the Bronx Polar Bears, you can get us at BX Polar Bears, whether it be at Instagram or Twitter @BX Polar Bears.
And if people want to take part in the event, can they do it day of, or do they have to register prior to?
Eileen, I think, has an opinion on that.
We have people register at a time. There's also sort of the standard waiver that someone has to complete. So that's our preference, is that people register ahead of time. However, we can bring forms the day of, and people can, sign those before they go in the water.
Okay, so they can just, maybe after a beer or two, they can just decide they want to jump in the water and they can drop by, or how does that work?
They can certainly drop by. Yes, we have a number of staff that are there. We actually can also pick up people. We have drop-off and pick-up locations in the Bronx that we could pick people up and bring them in, so that transportation won't be an issue.
Okay, and it makes no difference what the state of the weather will be. If it's raining, if it's pouring, if it's snowing, whatever, that the event is still going to go on.
It doesn't make a difference. Obviously, if you go in the water, you're going to get wet anyway. So, but it doesn't make a difference in terms of
how many people actually show up for this event? I'm sure it's grown over the years, but how many do you anticipate?
It's over 100.
Wow.
It's always over 100 folks. I mean, not everybody goes in, but a good percentage of that goes in, and. As Eileen mentioned, the Bronx Works is going to pick up folks that are taking the 6 train.
Michael Max,
we got to wind it up.
Eileen, Torres, we have to wrap it up with that. And
Ardina, next week.
Ardina, tell us about next week's show.
Well, working on getting a couple of politicians in next week. Good folks who are going to weigh in on the present political atmosphere.
Including the Bronx.
Including the Bronx. So listen in next week, folks. He may have a couple of surprise guests for you.
Surprise to us, too. Have a great week.
$1460 WVOX and WVIP HD2, New Rochelle, a Whitney Global Media Station.